probably one of the few places in America where you'll find a cannon aimed at a house.
That's to keep all the riffraff out of the neighborhood.
Hey sightseers, Sightseeing Sally here and Marty and the dogs. Today we are exploring a small town located on the shores of Lake Michigan known as Kiwani. Now Kiwani isn't forgotten in the sense that it has plenty of activity, plenty of people living here, but it is home to some really fascinating forgotten history, which is why we're here today. Long before Kiwani was first inhabited by white settlers, Native Americans called this land home, with the Potawatomi tribe settling in this area. And this was back in the late 1600s, the 17th century, that the first known inhabitants, the Native Americans, were living here. And what's interesting about this particular location is that back in 1674, a French explorer and priest by the name of Father Jacques Marquette came to this area and met the Potawatomi. Now over here you can see Marty checking out the marker that commemorates the spot where Father Marquette offered the holy sacrifice of Mass to the Native Americans. Now, from what I can tell, the information on the interactions between the Native Americans and early white settlers coming to this area is rather scarce. However, we do know from Kiwani County property records that the Potawatomi lived in this area until 1862 when they were forced out. Prior to that, it seems they coexisted with the whites who came to the area. It is known that a man by the name of Jacques Vieux opened a trading post up on the bluff in 1795. For those of you who don't know, much of modern Kiwani sits on a bluff overlooking Lake Michigan. Our next stop in remembering Kiwani's forgotten history brings us to Harbor Point Park. Because from here, we can see the mouth of the river, which played an integral part in explaining why people first settled here in Kiwani, besides the Native Americans who were here long before the white settlers. But before I get into that, I want to give a quick shout out of thanks to Michael, fellow sightseer from Kentucky, for tipping the trip jar, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. Basically allowing us to go, I don't know, maybe another 500-600 miles driving in the Prius. So Michael, thank you. It's because of you we were able to come back and finish filming here in Kiwani, and then some. Oh, did I say come back and finish filming? Yes, this is going to be one of those videos where I started it, but didn't finish it. So now I'm back, and you're going to see, since it's been, a whole year since we first filmed, you're going to see some differences, at least in this. But getting back to why we're here at the mouth of the river in Kiwani. If you look out there to the right of that fishing boat, you can see where the mouth of the river originates and where people thought they were going to be making money. Like serious money, as in the type of money gold draws people in for. Yes, you heard right, gold. Unlike any other town here in Wisconsin, Kiwani can actually attribute its start to a gold rush, as in the same soft metal that drew prospectors out west. But that gold rush was short-lived, and as people soon found out, there wasn't any gold to be mined from this area. And actually what I suspect that they did find was probably flour gold, or maybe even some small nuggets, because there have been some instances of that here in Wisconsin, in the Wisconsin rivers, but nothing substantial that could justify doing anything beyond dredging out this for harbor. Which, speaking of harbors, brings us to the next point of interest as to why this location here is so important in remembering Kiwani's forgotten history. Not only was Kiwani the location of a small gold rush, it is also home of the first car ferry service across Lake Michigan. On Sunday, November 27, 1892, the Ann Arbor Railroad Car Ferry Number 1 loaded 22 cars of flour which originated at Minneapolis and were destined to England, Scotland, and Ireland, being the first boatload of boxcars to be transported across Lake Michigan. Then across from where the car ferry service originated stands the old life-saving station. Originally built in 1893, the Kiwani Life-Saving Station is one of many that served as the precursor to the U.S. Coast Guard. The story of what led to the building of this life-saving station is rather gruesome. On November 17, 1886, 2 coal barges caught in a storm shipwrecked right off the shores of Kiwani. A total of 8 people died in front of several hundred townsfolk as they stood helpless, watching the events unfold from on shore. This tragedy ended up being the catalyst for an appeal to the U.S. government to have a life-saving station built. Given that at one time this whole area would have been covered in trees, it's no surprise that Kiwani's first industries were centered around logging and woodworking. About 3 miles up the river from here would have been the location of Kiwani's first sawmill. Other businesses eventually sprung up along the river, including the original factory where this next piece of iconic Kiwani history comes from. The world's largest grandfather clock resides here in Kiwani. 35 feet and 10 inches tall, this grandfather clock was built in 1976 to celebrate America's bicentennial. And, believe it or not, it still works today. Now, Marty and I were having a bit of a friendly disagreement about the original location of the grandfather clock. Turns out we were both right. Originally attached to the Svoboda factory near the old Kiwani Bridge, the clock was moved to the top of the hill shop across the bridge on Highway 42 in 1984 when the new factory was built. Located there for nearly 30 years, it was a popular photo stop for tourists on their way to Door County. And the location that Marty remembers it being at. For myself, I remembered something much older than that. The original location, and where I remembered seeing it. In addition to being the world's largest grandfather clock, what people don't realize about this iconic piece of Kiwani forgotten history is that the person who founded the factory where this was made emigrated from Czechoslovakia. When he got here, he opened his own store for making church furniture. Later, when demand for that fell by the wayside, they switched over to home furnishings, including grandfather clocks, which is what most people remember Svoboda Industries for. The other thing that some of you sightseers might find interesting, although not related to Kiwani itself, is that I have family that comes from Czechoslovakia as well. So, it's possible I could have family that knows Joseph's family. Maybe, or maybe not. Now you might be wondering why the words cold storage caught my eye. That's because this building used to house cheese. Known as the Preby Cheese Cold Storage Building, it was built in 1935 and replaced the Myers Cheese House that used to occupy the site. If you didn't know, Kiwani is a fishing town. Located on the shores of Lake Michigan, it's only natural that commercial fishing would eventually become a way of life for some individuals. And as you walk around Kiwani, you can find evidence of that. This isn't the only influence that the Great Lakes have had on Kiwani's forgotten history. Being located on the shores of Lake Michigan, Kiwani has played an important role during times of unrest and war. For example, in 1941, Kiwani Shipbuilding and Engineering Company was started. And between 1941 and 1946, they employed over 400 people and delivered 80 vessels to the U.S. government for war use. Here you can see the tug Ludington, which participated in D-Day and was later stationed here in Kiwani by the Army Corps of Engineers. After arriving in Kiwani, the tug was used in the construction and maintenance of harbors all over the Great Lakes. Now on the National Register of Historic Places, the tug has been put to rest and is open to tourists. Now, like a lot of towns we've visited, the railroad was once an important part of Kiwani's history. Interestingly enough, you can still find the old railroad depot here in Kiwani. Built in the 1890s to serve passengers on the Green Bay and Western Railroad, it now serves as a private residence. Driving through the residential neighborhoods of Kiwani, you'll likely come across a sign that says Marquette Historic District. And that's because here in Kiwani there are a number of old historic homes that grace its streets. In total, there are 49 homes in various architectural styles that make up this district. Wouldn't it be something to see inside these homes? I can just imagine how beautiful some of them are. And if big stately homes are not your thing, there's always this standout cottage overlooking the lake. Off in the distance you can see the Hotel Karsten. Originally called the Steamboat House, it was built in 1858 and served as the major hub for social activities. Then on Valentine's Day in 1912, a fire broke out, destroying the hotel. It was later rebuilt and named the Karsten Hotel. And what makes the Hotel Karsten that more fascinating is that it is supposedly haunted by 3 spirits. Not surprising, one of the spirits is William Karsten Sr., founder of the hotel. People claim you can smell cigar smoke when he's in your presence. The second spirit is William's grandson Billy, who died at a young age. And last but not least is Agatha, a former maid who likes to play tricks on people. According to the sign, you can still get a reservation here. Maybe this will be the location of a future Sightseeing Sally vid. These days, the Hotel Karsten isn't the only place in Kiwani giving up their ghosts. Look around and you'll find evidence of the past, leaving one to wonder what's happened to these days gone by. Even stuff that I remember has changed from back in the day. What looks like could be the front of some old fishing shacks used to be an old junk store here in Kiwani. You know, the type of junk store where you can find the weirdest, quirkiest things imaginable. That kind of junk store. Much like the ghosts that inhabit the Karsten, the history of this place has all but disappeared. Then there's these. What used to be known as Conkle's Corner is now the Anchor Restaurant. And the old mobile gas station is no longer in business. While we often mourn the changes that occur to our favorite places, let us not forget all the possibilities new growth brings, including the potential to rediscover forgotten history along the way, making the possibilities to one's imagination and a sidewalk leading to nowhere endless. Then again, if you're looking for a way to sum up life here in Kiwani, there's always this. Even the cows are friendly here in Kiwani. Until next time, this is Sightseeing Sally.